Hello and welcome to another Album of Record podcast. Man, how's it going, Andrew?
Good. I've got a exciting air conditioning update from last week. I did break down and turn on my air conditioning early. I did not make it to Memorial Day.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, it had to be done. I was thinking though, back like I don't know, it's probably been 6 or 7 years ago. My AC broke down, and it happened early in this summer. And I was like, well, do I really need air conditioning? I grew up without air conditioning. And so then some friends bet me that I couldn't make it all summer without air conditioning. And so I did. I went all year without air conditioning. But it was a mild summer and I didn't realize it. And then the next year, I was like, see, I don't need air conditioning. So I tried to do it again, and it was the most miserable summer ever. It was so humid. I literally ruined pieces of furniture in my house because it was so humid that the wood started to warp. It was
I thought you were
not,
going to say that you left sweat stains on your old couches, and
I probably did that too, to be honest. I mean, it
it's
was,
so gross.
it was
It's one
awful.
of
I
those
don't know.
things, like there's certain technologies and innovations in our lives that once you have them, you kind of can't go backwards. I always felt that way about, and granted, this is all changed now again, but I was early to have a GPS screen in my car.
Yeah.
And so I never had to remember how to get anywhere ever again. I could always plug in an address and it would take me right there. Um, and to like go backwards and not have that anymore seems impossible. And air
I,
conditioning is one of those too.
I had been living here probably 8 years, and I was going for a walk, and a food delivery guy was trying to find a place, and I was going for a walk in my neighborhood where I live. He stops and he asks me, "Hey, which street is this?" And I literally didn't know. I didn't know the name of the street. I knew exactly where I was. I knew how to get to home from there, but like I wasn't positive which street I was actually on. He like looks at me, he's like, "Well, you live here, don't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I I never
I don't
look
know
at
the
the
street
you
names.
don't need to know
Yeah.
the street. Like there's just certain things you just don't need to know in today's day and age. If I got lost, I could just look at my phone and navigate my way home.
Did you
And
did you
it's
go to AAA and get a triptych ahead of time?
oh man, I
Yeah.
remember those things. Yeah.
Now that if there's like a whole bunch of people listening and watching the show who are like, what language are they speaking?
Yeah.
Um, all right, so we're going to talk about our not so guilty pleasure bands today because why be guilty about your pleasures? There's no reason to.
That's
Um,
right.
but before we get to those, there were a couple news items this week about tours this summer. The Black Keys canceled or at least postponed. They canceled their tour, and it sounds like they're going to reschedule it in a different manner.
Yeah. They canceled the arenas, and it sounds like they're going to play some smaller venues.
And then you had sent along an item about 311 canceling some foreign
Some
overseas dates.
European dates as well. They were playing like Germany, maybe Poland, somewhere over there. And yeah, they put out a message saying basically the tour was not financially feasible for them, I believe was the way they phrased it. And so they weren't going to play those. They did keep I believe most, if not all, of their American dates. But yeah, and like some of the festival dates they were playing, they kept those. It was just some of the European shows.
So what do you make of kind of this round of cancellations? It certainly
Yeah.
feels a little bit foreign compared to what we were used to coming off the pandemic,
Hmm.
where it seemed like they could charge whatever they wanted and people would gobble up tickets to any show possible. Um, I and I'll let you go, of course, but I can't figure out if this is related to the overall market, if it's more related to these particular groups, maybe a combination of both. But where does your head go?
I saw on Twitter somebody posted a screenshot they did right before the tour was canceled of the floor availability, or the floor plan with the availability. And man, like it looked like 90% of the seats were available. I'm not sure which arena it was. This is for the Black Keys. Um, but there was a lot of seats available. So my first instinct was, well, maybe this is just, a couple bands who used to be able to play huge venues that, you know, Black Keys have not had a hit in quite a while, and maybe, some of their popularity is waning a little bit. But when you see that many open seats, I think it's more than that. I think it's hard not to look at it as also a pricing issue. And particularly, again, it's one thing to pay $100 to see the Black Keys in a smaller venue where you're going to be on the floor,
A
versus
theater.
paying $100 to be way up in the top deck of an arena for a two-person band. I don't know how well that translates. But the thing that really got me thinking about this was when we talked about our experience with trying to buy Pearl Jam tickets, and we talked about the fact that the market was telling us that people were still willing to pay insane prices. Pearl Jam's tickets are outrageously expensive, and they also sold out in an instant. And you see this with a lot of big, headlining acts. They're charging exorbitant prices right now for these tours, and people seemed to be buying them. But I wonder if the first signs of this starting to shift is happening with some of these smaller bands. Like, say what you will about Pearl Jam's popularity in like the general public, but it's still like an attraction. When Pearl Jam comes to town, it's a name that's going to get a lot of people interested in just as an event, and they carry that the legacy of being, a great live rock band, and there's just not that many left. And so I think for a lot of people, they're willing to spend a little bit more. But for maybe some of these smaller, mid-sized bands, I think we're starting to maybe see where people look at it as, hey, I went on a spending frenzy after COVID lockdowns. I went to every concert I could, and now, we've been dealing with inflation, and maybe things are getting tight for people's budgets, and they're just saying, you know what, I'm just not going to frivolously spend on concerts anymore.
So there are a couple thoughts that go through my head. Number one, somebody else on Twitter had pointed out that the get-in price for the Black Keys was $100. And as you said, to have premium tickets at $100 or more, and obviously on up, if you're going to be in the
Yeah.
first 5 rows, you're going to pay a lot more than $100 for pretty much any show in America. But the idea that we have a big outdoor theater pavilion type venue. If somebody is going and they're going to sit in the upper bowl of a basketball arena, or they're going to sit on the lawn, their get-in price can't be $100. It just can't be. It might be 50 or 60 plus fees, so you could be looking at 70 or 80. But I think that $100 barrier for the worst seats in a basketball arena is just another level. Unless you've got so much pent up demand because you disappeared for a long period of time, like Rage Against the Machine, or you're Bruce Springsteen or Pearl Jam. Um, because the other thought that I had is I was thinking about, well, what are some of the other big tours this year? And you've got the National grouping up with the War on Drugs to do their tour. Um, if they want to play those big venues, the National's huge, they're
Mhm.
big, but they're grouping up with another relatively large attraction in order to pull off that tour. So that was one thought. And then, the contrary to that is a couple years ago when Smashing Pumpkins and Jane's Addiction toured basketball arenas together here in Cleveland. They were playing on the trick or treating night on Halloween, and they had to sell their tickets on Groupon because they just couldn't sell. And maybe that was a Halloween thing, but even sometimes grouping up two bands like Smashing Pumpkins and Jane's Addiction is not enough to justify the price. I guess the bottom line is the economics of touring, unless you're Taylor Swift, Pearl Jam, or um,
I think you have like,
Bruce Springsteen, or it's really difficult.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think, Metallica, they're still
Metallica,
selling out big arenas. U2 could probably sell out a lot of places still, I would
Olivia
imagine.
Rodrigo,
Yeah, yeah, definitely some pop artists. I'm sure Adele can sell massive venues still. But yeah, the whole teaming up thing is definitely interesting. I think we're just in a weird space right now where I think when bands want to book a tour, maybe it's hard to even know, like, how do you balance that, like what size venue do you play versus the what do you charge for the tickets. And in a lot of cases, the bands don't have all that much say in what they can charge for tickets. And this kind of ties into, the lawsuit, the Department of Justice suing Live Nation and Ticketmaster, because though a lot of times these prices are driven by Live Nation and Ticketmaster, and you have a certain barrier that you have to hit just to make money. And I you think about a band like Pearl Jam, there's five guys in the band, plus Josh Klinghoffer tours with them, Boom Gasper still tours with them. So you got seven guys playing every night. You've got who knows how many road crew is with them, and you got to pay all those people. So when you're paying out all these salaries and you got to pay for logistics and transportation and all of that, and then you have to pay 50% of your ticket prices to Live Nation and Ticketmaster. Like, I do understand where that crunch comes in for these artists. And so, it's sort of a tricky thing, for the Black Keys. I'm not trying to minimize it, but, it's a little bit different when you've only got two guys in the band, I suppose. But I think for them that probably played into the economics of it a little bit when they needed to downsize the venue, that, you do have fewer mouths that you're feeding, I suppose.
but ultimately, I think they made a mistake in pricing. I think
Yeah,
that's really what it comes down to. And I'm looking right now at the National and the War on Drugs are coming to Blossom Music Center here in Cuyahoga Falls, and the get-in price on the lawn for two tickets is $113. So 50 some bucks a piece. And I think that makes a lot of sense. If if it would be $200 for my wife and me to go see the Black Keys, that's a totally different ball game
yeah,
on the lawn. Um,
yeah.
so yeah,
I
it's interesting.
I know Primus and Coheed are touring together. They're coming to Columbus, and last I knew, there was still a decent amount of tickets available even for that. And that's not in an arena; that's it at Kemba Live on the outdoor side. For people who don't know, in Columbus, there's a venue that's an indoor, but then on the other side, the stage actually has two sides to it, and then on the other side, it's one of those like medium sized outdoor venues with a lawn seating in the back. And there was a
And that's
decent amount of,
a $75 get in price.
yeah, and I was just kind of surprised that there were a decent amount of tickets for that. Those are two, like, they're not mega popular, but Prime, if you're into music, Primus and Coheed.
I think that's a bit of a mismatch between the two bands, to be perfectly honest. I like both of those bands. I don't really want to see both those bands on the same night, on the same bill necessarily. I support their choice to do it. I think it's weird, you
Yeah,
know.
no, that's certainly fair. But like last year when I saw Pixies and oh my gosh, Franz Ferdinand at that
And
same
Bully,
venue,
right?
and Bully. It was absolutely packed for Franz, and for the Pixies. It was absolutely packed. Unfortunately for Bully, it was not so packed. But all those people missed out because they were awesome. They put on such a good show. But anyways, I digress. I think it's just something to keep an eye on. It was funny. I saw in the last like couple weeks, or Bruce Springsteen canceled some dates and Neil Young canceled some dates, but they both cited health issues. And I'm sure that's what it is. But like, I'm to that point where there's almost a part of me that's suspicious now. Like, whenever anybody cancels a date, it's like, well, how many tickets were available? What are the sales like? Because it's just interesting to me as a music fan to see where are we going with these ticket prices, because we've talked about this on multiple occasions. Like, there's gonna be a tipping point where people are gonna stop paying these prices for these shows, and I'm just curious if we're hitting that, or if these are just a couple outliers, couple unique scenarios of artists who maybe are just not as popular as they used to be.
Well, and I think it's everything. I think there was so much pent up demand after the pandemic that I was all gung ho. I went to see everything. I went to all these different festivals too. The reports from Coachella this year were that the ticket sales were very, very slow compared to
Yeah,
previous years. Um, and even then, a tour like the Black Keys is kind of competing with these festivals too, because for a couple $100, depending on how many days the festival is, but for a couple $100 you can go to a festival and see 40, 50 bands maybe.
yeah,
And so to drop $100 on just one for one night might seem like a lot, but I think a lot of people kind of scratch the itch. And I think
yeah,
a lot of these bands are making the second, third, fourth round, and they they have to disappear for a while so demand can be pent back up again. We skipped our big annual festival in Tempe, Arizona this year just because we've done so much since the pandemic kind of broke.
yeah. Do you know who's opening for Black Keys on this tour? I don't even know that.
I
But
can't remember.
I don't feel like I remember it being anybody like too major, but that's another thing too that's tough too. Like, if you're a band that, like, you thought you were going to open in these arenas, and,
Oh, is it the Head and the Heart?
oh yeah, that's right. So, again, like, that's another one that, like, they certainly have a niche audience, but they're not going to, like, really get, like, your average person who's just looking for something to do. I don't think they're going to excite people that much either. And like, I do think, like, the Black Keys do carry, like, some clout. Like, you tell people you saw the Black Keys, most people will be like, oh, that's pretty cool. How were they? But it's not like it was for them 10 years ago. Like, 10 years ago, they were smoking hot as a band. Like, they were an absolute indie darling, and everybody was talking about them. And, like, even like their new album, Ohio Players, like, it's a pretty good album. I actually like it quite a bit compared to their last couple albums, but, like, I didn't feel particularly, like, gung ho to go see them play. I not certainly not in an arena. If you told me I could go see him at Newport here in Columbus, like, I would love to see Black Keys at Newport, but to see him at one of our arenas, it's just not going to do as much. And then, like you said, add the get in price, so I'm going to pay well over $100 for that. It's just not going to happen.
I was surprised that Death Cab and the Postal Service was able to play Nationwide Arena on kind of the second leg of the tour, but I didn't get the sense that they were hard sellouts every single night
Yeah.
of that tour.
But that's a one though where you really did a great job of alignment. The people who are there want to see both of those bands.
Well, and the tour was all set up with crossover. So Death Cab played first, then the Postal Service, and then they did a few songs together to end the night.
Yeah.
It was a
Right.
tight set,
Yeah.
totally integrated. I
Yeah.
think Death Cab wore all black, and then Postal Service wore all white,
I love it.
and then the rest of Death Cab came out in all white to finish the night. I don't know. I
Yeah.
didn't go to any of those shows. I
Yeah.
bought tickets to two of those shows. Didn't go to either one.
Wow.
As it turned out, I sold off those tickets both times just because the scheduling didn't quite work
Yeah.
out. Um, all right, let's get to the real topic of the day, the not so guilty pleasures. And I term it that way because I don't feel like at this stage of the game in my mid 40s that I need to feel guilty about anything that I actually like. There certainly were many times in my life where I hid the fact that I liked some of these artists. You and I have not exchanged notes on this particular topic, so I really
Yeah.
don't know exactly. I might have some familiarity with some of the things you bring up, and you might have some familiarity with the ones that I bring up, but I really don't know where you're going to go with this. So, how do you want to do it? You want to go back and forth?
Yeah, we can do it back and forth. Sure. Um, I'll take the first one. I'm going to talk about a band that I'm positive we've definitely probably talked about these guys on here a couple times. It's one that I know you like as well. But there was definitely a time where if you cared about your credentials as a rock music fan, people would look down on you for liking this band, and that's Collective Soul. Um, and I I actually I listened to all of their albums, and I would say up through their out. I think it was like their seventh album, maybe afterwards. That was the last one that I like really listened to and gave a bunch of listens. After that, the next few I listened to like once and kind of checked out on them. But I will say for people like they just put out an album this year, a new album called Here to Eternity. And it's kind of a return to form. I told you, I said this is kind of like their dark matter. It kind of hitting on some of that essential like Collective Soul sound that I missed from some of those earlier albums. But Collective Soul sort of had this reputation as a wussy band, like certainly like when we were like really like in
Their
the
dressing
90s.
style was kind of glam, even, and
Yeah.
they seemed,
But between
the
glam and like overly preppy, it was like this weird mix of those two elements in their style.
they were definitely more popular, more credibility than like Crash Test Dummies,
Yeah.
but they were not to be taken seriously when they first came out. Even no matter how many good songs they put out, and to hit the scene with Shine the way they did was just a huge hit. And then everything else after that, they kind of crossed over to adult contemporary, and that's just like the Scarlet Letter,
Yeah.
or was the Scarlet Letter in the '90s.
A point of pride for me with them though was that they played Woodstock 98. Was that what year? 99? 99.
Woodstock '99.
Woodstock 99. Uh I was proud of them for getting that. Like cuz at that time like Woodstock 99 was loaded with a lot of like heavier bands, and I just thought it was kind of cool that they sort of were able to get on that stage. And I have a bootleg of their performance, and they killed it. They absolutely killed it that day. They did a fantastic job. But yeah, it's just one of those bands. Like I don't know that I would ever say I was ashamed of them, but there were definitely times like I would tell people. People would ask you like, "Who are your favorite bands?" You'd say Collective Soul, and you just get this really kind of look, because I think for a lot of people they were a one or two hit wonder band, but like they actually had like a decent amount of actual hits. Like if you really sit back and list them out and talk about, and like I said, like their first four or five albums all hold up over time. Like they're really solid.
So this makes me realize that my not so guilty pleasures are going to be far more embarrassing than yours. I mean, we'll see where you go
Well,
from here.
yeah,
But
okay, okay.
first on my list is a band that was guilty of crossing over to adult contemporary. Um, they certainly started off being kind of like an alternative darling, and then quickly became just radio friendly hits. And one of Howard Stern's favorite bands, Train. Train.
Ooh, okay.
I loved that first record. I think Meet Virginia is one of the best singles from whatever year it came out, or that kind of time period. I thought it's just a phenomenal song. Um, Drops of Jupiter and some of the stuff that came out on the second album. And then I kind of fell off with that band. I didn't keep up with them really, really well, but I thought Calling All Angels was a really good song too.
Yeah,
And to be honest with you, uh, before it became a ubiquitous song that was played everywhere all the time, I respected Hey Soul Sister as being a well crafted, catchy song. I didn't love it, but I had respect for it. And I think Patrick Monahan Pat Monahan from Train is just one of the most talented vocalists from the entire kind of late 90s into the 2000s time period.
It's so funny that you used the word well crafted, because I was just getting ready to say, if there's one thing I know about you as a music fan, is like the respect and love you have for a well crafted song. Like,
Especially pop songs.
especially pop. Somebody who can really write a tight pop song, you're going to be drawn to it. So this really actually makes perfect sense to me, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, regardless of what anybody thinks of them, they write really well crafted songs, like just very tight, controlled songs. And like you said, with those vocals too, when you talk about vocal control, like, it's really pretty remarkable. Definitely
So,
not
and
my
the other
favorite
thing
band in the
was,
world, but yeah.
yeah. So, another thing is that Pat Monahan is from Erie, Pennsylvania, and that that felt like a place that I knew pretty well from growing
Yeah.
up and kind of being around the area. And that, but really, they kind of came out of San Francisco, and I thought that, especially when they first came out, I thought they were going to be another Counting Crows, and
Yeah.
they really turned out to not be that much of a Counting Crows, but um, certainly they're still a relevant band to this day, which is kind of surprising in some ways, but also not surprising in others. When they do a cover, they cover Led Zeppelin, they cover all these crazy things because Monahan is such a phenomenal
Yeah.
singer. So anyway, yeah,
I
I will still go back and listen to their kind of top five, top six hits.
I'm positive, but I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure. So I'll say I'm positive that they played a free show on campus my freshman year at Ohio State. I just remember it being such a big deal. Like, everybody was going, but like, I was still a little bit in my I'm too good for that phase, and I didn't go. And like, now I kind of wish I would have gone. Like, even though I'm not a big Train fan, but like, I still kind of wish I would have gone just to see it, But I'd
That's funny.
act like I was too cool for it. As far as like, how cool or uncool these picks are, I will say, like, when I first pitched this to you, I said, I was thinking of it as bands or artists that people might be surprised that we love. So maybe mine lean a little bit more there, I suppose, than guilty pleasures. But I think like a couple of mine like are definitely guilty pleasures, or not so guilty pleasures.
Yeah.
My next one is one that you will not be surprised to hear me talk about. I'll say her all the time. An artist that I just love her music. That's Courtney Love. And I'm tying Courtney Love and Hole together. Now, this one's interesting because I would say Hole's album Live Through This is not anything that belongs on any kind of a guilty pleasure. Like, that was a bona fide hit album. Tons of people bought it. There was nothing uncool about that album. So it might seem like, well, how can that be on this list? But I didn't stop with that album. I listened to Celebrity Skin. I listened to Nobody's Daughter, which really is essentially a Courtney Love solo album. Eric Erlandson was not involved with that at all, and in fact, there was some kind of debate over whether Courtney even had the right to use the name Hole for it. She hired like some dude who was like a 20-year-old guitarist or something to play on that album. Is like such a weird thing that happened. But my favorite thing that Courtney Love has done is her solo album, America's Sweetheart. And that album got panned. Like, nobody liked that album, and I adore it. I just listened to it driving back to Columbus over the weekend. I listened to it just to refresh my memory on it. And I mean, I love that album. I don't know what there's a vulnerability to Courtney Love. Like, she's lived a hard life in some ways. In some obvious ways, but like, a lot of it maybe is self-inflicted. There's always questions over how genuine she is and this and that. But like, in her music, in her vocal delivery, you can just feel the pain that she's trying to get across in these songs. And something about that just latches on with me, and I just resonate completely with that style of delivery. You know, they her whole, you know, they could lean into punk, but like to me these were just like really good alternative rock songs, especially by the time you got to like Celebrity Skin, the a lot of that punk veneer had come off. I mean, that's almost a pop rock album in a lot of ways. But yeah, I don't think there's anything cool about Courtney Love. Like, I don't think people look at her today and think she's real cool or anything like that. But I love Courtney Love's music, and I think people might be kind of surprised, you know, just based on the bands that I listen to, that this is somebody that I've listened to everything she does, you know, all of these albums.
Yeah, Courtney Love is. I was never a giant fan of any of the music. I do think she's an entertaining personality. I thought she was really good in Man on the Moon.
Yes,
Um,
she's very surprisingly good.
but then she kind of disappeared from the acting scene too. It's a very confusing career, but
Yeah,
I think it's another kind of respectable pick. And although I think you're right that most people don't listen to that solo record at all. I
yeah,
think for most people, it's Live Through This and maybe one song off Celebrity Skin.
yeah, pretty much. Malibu.
So is Hole essentially Courtney Love in a backup band at this point then?
So not really. So after she did that, so
So it was
nobody.
what, Melissa Oftamar and
Yeah, and Eric Erlandson, and
Eric Erlandson.
I forget the drummer's name. But they they so after she did that Nobody's Daughter album and used the name Hole, and you know, Eric got really pissed about it. They actually reconciled after that, and Courtney actually publicly apologized for it and basically said Eric was right. I shouldn't have done that. Like, it was a Courtney Love solo album. Uh, they have played some one-off shows, the original Hole, here and there. There's always talk in the water that they might do something again. Courtney has certainly not slammed the door shut on that, but she also hasn't said like anything is like on the horizon or anything like that.
There's certain artists with certain careers where you almost don't blame them for bringing the rest of the band back.
Yeah.
It's like, does anybody need the Ben Folds 5, or could we just go see Ben Folds?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so he's good. He's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
all right,
that bass player was pretty darn good though.
he
But
was, but now it's just, you know, to our earlier conversation about bands not having to split money.
yeah,
He just goes out there with a piano.
that's great.
And he does the coolest tours. He's doing, it's called the Paper Airplane Request Tour, where you put your request on a paper airplane, you throw it at the
Oh, I
stage,
love that. That's very
and
cool.
he'll play something that comes up on a paper airplane.
That's very cool.
And by the way, now that we're mentioning this, we're all over the place, but
Yeah.
something I forgot to bring up was maybe the most profitable tour of all time was when my wife and her friends all went to a stadium in Pittsburgh to see Ed Sheeran. And it's just Ed Sheeran, his acoustic guitars, and
Yeah.
a loop pedal. And he just plays by himself.
He's so talented. He really is.
He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay, my second pick, a newly minted 11-year-old. I very badly wanted a tape at the store, and so I went down to the Woolworths with my mom, and I bought the Pretty Woman soundtrack because
Oh.
I was in love with a song by Roxette. It Must Have Been Love.
Okay.
And so I was maybe the only boy my age who was in love with Roxette. And man, it just kept going. I just loved them so much. I loved all those singles, Look Sharp, Joyride, uh, just so many songs. And I I remember the day where my wife was like talking about Roxette as if Roxette was the name of the female vocalist,
Mm.
and I was just mortally offended that she didn't know that her
It's
name. She passed away. Her name was Marie Fredrickson, but Roxette was a duo.
yeah.
That was the band name.
Here, I thought you were going to say you bought it for the title track, "Pretty Woman." Which,
No, the Roy
by the way,
Orbison.
Roy Orbison. Thank you. I was sitting there trying to remember actually who even sang that, and I couldn't remember. But
It was a pretty bad soundtrack, though.
I
It
remember
had
buying soundtracks. Like, remember when soundtracks were a thing? Like, those just aren't a thing anymore.
it had a song by Natalie Cole called "Wild Women Do,"
Okay.
which was like I don't know how that one made it onto the soundtrack. Fame 90. There was a redone version of Fame by David Bowie. A pretty big hit, The King of Wishful Thinking by Go West.
Okay.
I'll Get Over You, I Know I Will. You'd know it if you heard it,
I'm
probably.
sure. I'm sure.
There's a Jane Wiedlin song, Roxette. There's a Robert Palmer song, a Peter Cetera song, and then "Oh Pretty Woman" by Roy Orbison, and then "Show Me Your Soul" performed by Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Really? Oh my
I know.
God. Wow.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
I wonder, like, I'd love to hear the story of how that wound up on there. Like,
So yeah, that was the story of how I got into Roxette, but it didn't stop there. I loved all their big hits, and I will still listen to it to this day. I won't even go on private mode on Spotify. Do not care.
Yeah.
Happy to admit I love Roxette.
Yeah. Okay.
No comment from Andrew.
I couldn't, like, I don't think if you told me to name a Roxette song, like, I don't think I could have done it off the top of my head. Like, I certainly, like, am familiar, and, like, I'm sure if I heard the songs, I would know them.
The Look, Listen to Your Heart.
Oh, The Look. That's The Look. Okay. So that is one that I loved. I loved The Look when I was a kid. That was a good song, man. Yeah. All right. But
1989.
Yeah, I just don't have a lot of, like, things I can add to that, unfortunately. Just off my radar.
Although because of this episode and because I'm reading the Wikipedia, apparently he's reforming Roxette with somebody who won like a singing contest in Europe.
Oh, it's so, like
Eurovision.
Like Fuel trying to get Daughtry to sing for them, right?
I know.
All right. My next one, again, like, you're kind of making me feel bad because, like,
right. I don't care.
This one, like, again, is not one that there's any reason to be ashamed of. This one falls more into I think people would be surprised, because when I talk about music, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, that when we say something is the best or, the worst, we're only speaking, subjectively about ourselves. There's no objective good and bad, but I always throw in a little caveat. My caveat to that is country music. That country music is objectively bad, particularly pop country. But I don't listen to country music. I'm not throwing shade on anybody who does. It's just not for me. But having said that, there is one artist that I have been obsessed with over the last couple years, and that's Zach Bryan. And, like, I think people would be surprised at just how much I love Zach Bryan's music. I listen to him all the time. I follow him on Instagram. I follow him on Twitter. I constantly following because he's constantly writing and posting clips as he writes songs. He'll just post the clips on his Instagram and his Twitter. And, like, I'm on the edge of my seat. Wait, he's about to drop another album any week now. It's finished. It's coming.
With a cigarette in his mouth or in his guitar strings.
Yep, that's right. But yeah, he's got a new album called The Great American Bar Scene coming out. I don't know if that's officially the title, but that's what he's said it's going to be called. He put out the first single for it last week, Pink Skies. Phenomenal song. But yeah, I don't go back to, like, everything he's done in the past because he's ridiculously prolific. And again, his major label debut. So he had two albums, Deanne and Elizabeth, that he pretty much put out on his own. But then he did a major label debut called American Heartbreak, and that thing is like 40 freaking songs long. Like, it's the most insane major label debut I think I can recall in a long time, but it is strikingly good. But then last year he put out his self-titled album, and that's the one that I absolutely fell in love with. So as much as I don't listen to country, there's just something about Zach Bryan's voice that I love. And the way I don't know, the way he approaches songwriting, they're very simple, stripped down, but he's able to layer different elements to it. It's just something that I like. Really, really, really love Zach Bryan's music, and I think it would certainly be surprising. I don't feel any reason to be ashamed of it. He's a huge, massive star. Tons of people love Zach Bryan, so I'm not going out on any limbs here, but I just think it's one that's surprising.
Yeah, I've listened to some Zach Bryan. I think it's really cool. I certainly have not gotten into it in the way that you've gotten into it.
Yeah,
Um, but he is a phenomenon, and
yeah,
the way that he's caught fire in a post radio world, a post MTV world,
yeah.
where he can sell out basically any venue he wants in the universe at this point, across the country, across the world. It's I assume across the world. I definitely across the country.
Yeah, he's playing
Um,
the Horseshoe here in Columbus this summer. It's part of a festival, but like he's the draw. You know, people,
he's the guy.
everybody's going there to see Zach Bryan. And yeah, like in some ways he's kind of like what Eric Church was kind of hyped to be. If you remember when there was that breakthrough moment that Eric Church was supposed to kind
I
of.
love that record, by the way.
I did too. I listened to that one a lot
It's
at
a
the
great
time.
record.
But like he never really was able to follow up on that momentum. And I have not heard anything about Eric Church in a while. Whereas
Well, and he couldn't pull off the live show
yeah, as Zach
as
does.
well as Zach Bryan does, because when Eric Church sings live, he's good, but it's definitely thinner, and he sounds a little bit more like a studio construct than this raw dude who sings with cigarette smoke in his face and
Yeah,
posts clips straight to Instagram. There's
yeah,
like a genuineness to what Zach Bryan's doing, which it doesn't surprise me in some ways how he's
yeah.
caught on.
And he's just such a
But it's
songwriting force that it just doesn't feel like he's going away anytime soon. Like when
no.
you're that prolific, you can just make an album that as fast as, like, he's literally been on tour. Like, he's finishing up an album while he's on tour. Like, it's nuts.
Well, I don't want to go too far down this road, but when you're in the country market, you're also kind of uncancelable. I mean,
Yeah,
Morgan Wallen still has a career, uh,
yeah,
and if he would been in many other genres of music, he'd be done,
that's true.
done.
Although I don't get the sense there's any fear of that with Zach Bryan, but you never
No,
know.
probably not.
But you never know.
I mean, of all the ways to end your career, though,
Yeah,
like that's one of the possibilities.
definitely. Yeah,
you
it
know.
definitely has a little bit of a shield there.
All right. Well, I'm going back to my youth, even earlier than Roxette for my next one. This one is straight from my dad. This was what I was raised on. We were a Motown household. My dad grew up in Cleveland, in kind of East Cleveland area. And when he was a teenager, he was able to go to these little clubs and see Motown stars, the Temptations, the Four Tops, the Commodores, Junior Walker and the All Stars. All these bands just came over from Detroit and would play. And so my dad grew up seeing all these guys in little clubs, and um, so as he had kids and we were born, his obsession with some of those artists continued. And the biggest pop star in the world for a time was Lionel Richie.
Mm.
And man, were we giant Lionel Richie fans.
I
His
should have known this one was
self-titled
coming.
record, Dancing on the Ceiling, uh, Hello, all those songs, even the cheesiest of the cheesy Lionel Richie songs, I am all in, and I make no apologies. I will play it. I will play it on the touch tunes when we're at certain restaurants, and you're going to sit and listen to it
But
as
nobody
well. And that's
cares.
just how it's going to go.
Nobody like see this one. You're coming around to my side a little bit. Like, there's nothing to be ashamed of about Lionel Richie.
No,
Everybody likes Lionel Richie. Like,
I think so
you know,
too.
you may not listen to him all the time, but like if a Lionel Richie song comes on, you're like, hell yeah. You know, like you get that hell yeah. Uh,
Or if you play Easy by the Commodores.
yeah, yeah. You know, so like this is one that you don't need to be ashamed of, but it's a little bit falls into the maybe more surprising uh
Yeah.
I think, although it's not surprising for me because I've heard you talk about him before, but
Yeah. We know too
I
much.
know exactly. But no, that's a fun one. That's a fun one. I'm I have a couple that were on my list that I think I'm going to skip for now and maybe just do them as because like I feel like we sort of did two very different lists. Um,
It's all right, man. I think it's perfect.
but I'll talk about a sort of genre or a scene. And this one goes back to high school for me. And this is Christian music ska scene. This so we're talking like mid 90s here, and in particular the Orange County Supertones, Five Iron Frenzy. There are a couple other ones. There's like the Insiders. Trying to think. Well, there was a swing band called the W's who had a moment in that scene as well. I saw the W's play with Five Iron Frenzy at the Fulton County Fair. Uh,
Did you learn to dance like a ska kid?
you know, I felt so awkward trying to do the skank. You know,
Oh yeah.
I kind of felt awkward doing it, and I just was such like a loser as a kid that like I couldn't do anything like if I didn't
I
feel
mean, I
cool
know you
about it.
listen to Christian ska.
And I listened to Christian ska, but I the Orange County Supertones in particular I cite often as like a like actual huge like musical influence on me. They have one of the best bass players I've ever heard in my life. He was their primary songwriter actually. And I played bass in a band in high school, and I used to just love trying to figure out what he was doing. Like, he was such a unique bass player. And like, you know, in ska, like the guitarist is really just kind of doing the upstrokes, you know, like they're the coloring. It's the bass player that drives the songs. And so as a bass player, there was something about it that I thought was cool. And people might say, well, why the Christian thing? Well, that was the scene. Like it like yeah, I mean you had like Real Big Fish, you know, No Doubt's kind of ska adjacent. They
They
certainly
certainly started
they
out more
certainly
ska.
came out of that scene. Rancid has some ska elements in them. Certainly like a song like Time Bomb was
Mighty
definitely
Mighty Boss Tones.
oh, Boss Tones. Yeah, yeah. So you know, I mean, there was secular ones that I listened to as well, but there was that I'm a person that was like really drawn by scenes. I loved the Seattle scene, and all these like Christian ska bands were friends. They kind of hung out, and like so. Yeah, the Supertones were like the serious, quote unquote, serious band of them. Like they were probably the most accomplished, the most well known. They had uh a song called Little Man that actually had some crossover, like it actually got some play on MTV. But then like Five Iron Frenzy, they were like the jokers of the group. Like they were friends with Less Than Jake, which is another one. And they were like their lyrics are just hilarious. Like every song is just a joke. But I don't know. It was just a fun scene that I was really into. But like, there was never anything cool about ska music. You know, like you get the
Yeah.
marching band horns. You know, I mean, I don't know how cool it ever was, but like, I liked that scene, and I've talked. You know, it was there was sort of like they were kind of like cousins, the weird cousin of punk music, you know, like there's a lot of threads that were similar, but yeah, that was just something that I was really into, and I still listen to those bands today.
So I went through the a ska phase just because I had a friend who was really into it, and I was living in the city of Boston. but he was a ska purist. So he
Yeah, those
loved. I mean,
guys.
he did like some of the poppier ska bands, but he loved the Scatolites
Yeah.
and more, you know, the ska bands that actually had African Americans in the band and leaned way more into the jazz and the
Yeah.
soloing,
Yeah.
those elements. And so I went to a lot of those shows, a little less punk, a lot more of
Yep.
the jamming and improvisation, within the structures of ska. But I, are we ready for seventh wave ska? Like, is it seventh wave
I
now?
think it's about time. Like it's been a minute. Like ska has not had its next moment, so maybe the world's ready.
Yeah, you're right though. I mean, stylistically, there's only so much you can do with the upbeat guitar, the upbeat strumming on the guitar,
Yeah.
and I have never been able to do it, by the way. I can't
It's
play guitar like
right.
that.
Like I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying like they weren't the ones that were like setting like the melody of
No.
the song. They were adding the color. But it actually is. You're absolutely right. Like the timing of that and the control to get those upstrokes just right. Like it's not as easy as you would think. I mean, it's not
No.
technically proficient. It's just a weird way of playing guitar because when you learn, you're primarily learning on the downstrokes. So
Yeah, I mean it's not how you learn to play basically anything that you learn to play when you first start playing guitar.
yeah.
All right, my next pick, and you know what? As it turns out, I'm going all to stuff that was music of my youth, kind of before I started listening to things that I thought were cool. Um, when I went and abandoned the 80s, once the 90s hit and grunge became my thing, I abandoned pretty much all the bands that I listened to in the 90s, or all the ones that I listened to in the 80s. You know, I still, I'll defend Guns N' Roses to this day. um, but I threw away bands like Poison. I listened to a lot of Poison as an 8, 9, 10 year old. I
Mhm.
listened to Tesla, The Great Radio Controversy, some of those bands. But one band that
Ugly
I
Kid
just
Joe.
couldn't give up, Ugly Kid Joe. You know, my brother had the single tape, and that seemed about perfect for Ugly Kid Joe.
I used to draw
Um,
that their logo, the dude with the middle finger. I used to draw
but
that everywhere because I
their
was
cover of the Cats in the Cradle was awesome.
it was like that was like a legit, really, really good song, and like they act. I mean, look, they had other really good songs. They actually were a better
Sure.
band than like I'm not trying to make this out like they're an embarrassment or anything, but like it's just funny because they're such a band of that time. Like they're just squarely stuck in that pre-grunge, post-hair
With Mr.
metal.
Big.
Yeah, right. Yep, right in there.
But the one band that I couldn't give up and I kept following until they put out a greatest hits similar to what Aerosmith did, and that's Bon Jovi.
Oh,
I
that's a good pick for
loved
you.
I loved Bed of Roses. I loved their cheesy ballads. I couldn't give up my favorite songs from New Jersey. Um, I was so uncool in those days. I probably liked New Jersey better than Slippery When Wet, which was like the one that everybody loved.
That was what
I
I had
didn't
on
need
tape.
any Yeah, I didn't need any more Def Leppard in my life, but I couldn't give up Bon Jovi. So Bon Jovi's my other one.
Hey, and speaking of soundtracks, what was the
Young
that Young
Guns,
Guns? Talk about a soundtrack, man. Like I had that on cassette too. Like that was
Blaze of Glory.
yeah, dude. Like hell yeah. Uh I dude, so I don't know that I really listened to New Jersey a lot. Is New Jersey the one with Better Roses?
No, I think that one came
Or was that
after.
after Slippery?
Yeah, but New Jersey had "I Would Die for You." These 5 words I swear to
Oh,
you.
yes, that's right. That's right. God, I'm so
When you
glad you
breathe,
picked
I
this
want to be
one.
the air for you.
I'm so glad you picked this one because like these are just like memories. Like these were memory hold albums for me. Like for me, it
All
was
right, hang on a second.
yeah.
It was "Lay Your Hands on Me,"
Yeah.
"Bad Medicine,"
Oh my
"Born to Be My
God.
Baby."
Holy dude, these songs that I've not thought about. Oh,
But for me, it was "I'll Be There for You," and
yeah.
I would use the tape rewind function that would look for the pause,
Yeah.
and I would replay that song over and over and over again on my tape.
Nice. Yeah, dude. No, it was like for me it was Slippery When Wet. Like that was I had that one and I had the Young Guns soundtrack. But you know, like I vividly remember like that being one of the first albums that I really listened to. Like when I was really
It hit
young.
number one on the billboards, though. I mean, this
Yeah.
was a ridiculous hit.
Yeah, and I just think at that time I was just listening to like radio stuff. Like I don't think I was listening to albums a lot, and that was probably one of the first albums that I got on cassette and like just listened
Yeah,
to cover to cover. So that's funny. What the one what I wish I the one that had Bed of Roses. I remember a couple of people in my class like being really into that album, and I thought it was all right, but that one never grabbed me the way Slippery When Wet did. Although I like as you're mentioning these songs off of New Jersey, I think
it
that
was
one would
"Keep
have
the Faith."
Keep the Faith, yeah. And like that one didn't do as much for me, but I should have given New Jersey a shot at that time because I think I would have liked it a lot more.
Yeah, I didn't follow them all the way to "Keep the Faith," but I loved "Bed of Roses."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I can't remember what their greatest hits was called.
I don't
Crossroad
I'm not
or
gonna know
something.
that. I'm not gonna know.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, doesn't
that's
matter.
another one that like by the time grunge came out though, they were just out the door for me. But yeah, it's just
Oh, for sure.
so funny to like think back about that band. I really don't think about them very much, but yeah, it's a good. I'm very happy that you picked that one. I don't know how many more we've got here. We're coming up on
Well, you can do one, I can do one, and then we can hit your honorable mentions because I only have one more.
okay. Um, I have a couple here that I could talk about. I'm gonna talk about Brockhampton. Uh, this is a self-described boy band, and so I think that in and of itself makes people like surprised that I like them so much. And I don't just like them; I love this group, or I should say, loved now
I have
because they
never
are.
heard of Brockhampton. I
Oh,
have no idea who they are,
oh,
and I'm looking them up right now for the first time.
fascinating. Okay. Well, so they call themselves a boy band, but it's not what you think. They are essentially a rap collective, primarily by started by Kevin Abstract, rapper out of Texas. They and like they eventually put together this whole. They were more than a band. They were more than a collective of rappers. They had producers, they had visual artists, they had videographers. Like they put together, like they would release like video clips of different things, self-produced music videos. They had an aesthetic to them because they used the same artists for everything. They all lived together in a house for a while. And so it was like one of those things that was just more of a bit whole collective. But yeah, they put out I don't know 8 albums I think 8 or 9 albums. But they just I think just last year they put out what was to be their final album. But really their final albums they put out 2 of them. Like one of them is essentially a Kevin Abstract solo album. The other one was just like finishing some demos that were laying around. But uh this is not a super popular band or group, but like for people who are into that scene, they were massively popular. I just put them on this list because for one thing, while I listen to some hip hop, I don't listen to a ton of it. So I think it's kind of interesting from that perspective. And then also just like the whole boy band thing was always still kind of like weird to be like, oh yeah, listen to this Brockhampton, they're a boy band. But yeah, that's my pick.
I'm trying to think if I ever listened to any actual boy bands seriously, and
I I know
I,
I
I
other than Brockhampton, I who again,
Yeah,
it's you got like I keep saying this as much with a straight face as I can. It's obviously very tongue in cheek. Like if you
yeah.
listen to them, they are not a boy band; they are a rap collective. Like these are all rap songs, you know. So, but they have absolutely incredible production. Uh, just ridiculously talented rappers, producers, writers. Like truly, like this is artistically one of the best. Like their trilogy, the Saturation 1, 2, and 3 albums are just absolutely nuts from a creative explosion perspective. So they were
Well,
big.
now I'm gonna have to check it out because I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, they were big enough. Like they played like late night shows. Like they did like Kimmel. I know they did Kimmel. I remember that they had a very memorable set on that. Uh, it was a really great group. I'm actually sad that they're not together anymore. But
All right, my last pick is one that I wrote about on the album of record. I was a very little kid when I saw them live for the first time, and I just absolutely fell in love with this group. And I had to have their greatest hits on tape. And I was, I don't know, I must have been like 6, maybe 7 years old. And uh, I just was blown away by seeing Air Supply,
oh,
the band who writes about love, all out of love, making love out of nothing at all, lost in love.
yeah,
Um, that just it's a weird band to hold on to your entire life, but here I am holding on to them my entire life. Um, it's super cheesy, but the vocals, these guys might as well have been Broadway stars with the range and the harmonies and everything that they could do vocally. uh, they obviously wrote gigantic hits. I just would have thought, if you would have asked me when I was 13 or 14 if I would ever turn on this music or stop listening to it someday, I asked this question to myself a lot. Like I asked myself this question a lot about heavy music, like death metal and stuff too.
at
Like,
what point are we
is
going to
the
get too old for it?
was this a phase?
Yeah,
And uh, because I can tell you how much I love the new Knocked Loose record,
mm-hmm.
it wasn't a phase. It
Definitely
has
not.
not been a phase. Um, but neither was Air Supply. It
There you
wasn't a
go.
phase. They're awesome. But I actually think it probably opened the door for other stuff too. I don't. I really don't like Journey, but there are probably 3 or 4 Journey songs that I do like because I like Air Supply. Um,
Can I just
I don't
say,
know. It just go ahead.
not to go down a journey rabbit hole here, but somebody just posted something a couple days ago. I saw a clip of a Journey song live, and I don't even remember what song it was, but like they showed like it was some of the most technically proficient live playing by a band I've ever seen. I was
They're
like,
ridiculous.
holy cow. Like, I guess because I don't listen to Journey at all, I had no idea how talented those guys actually are. Like to see them play it live and like it sounded like a studio recording. Like that's how good they performed.
Yeah, Neil Sean is the guitar player, and he's been known as one of the
It was
most
unbelievable. It was
amazing
unbelievable.
players
Like what he was
for the
playing
majority of
live,
his career.
the timing was just impeccable. Like literally like he was like I mean, you could have almost convinced me that they were just like lip syncing and playing like to unplugged in instruments. That's how good it sounded. Like it was impressive. But anyways, I didn't mean to divert from your air supply talk, but it
It's all
just
right,
made
man.
me
I
think
was
of that.
done.
Uh,
The only other thing that's amazing about Air Supply is that they're essentially 2 lead singers. The one guy might as well be 6'8", and the other guy might as well be 5'2". So to see the two of them together on stage, singing and going crazy, it's just unbelievable. And when I was this little kid watching them, it felt like there were 20 members on stage, because there was a dude standing behind the keyboards, and then the drummer, and then another doing percussion, and then the bass and the guitar, and then the tall guy would occasionally pick up the acoustic guitar, and I was like, what are all these sounds, and where are they all coming from, and how are they all working together? It was a really awakening kind of a moment for live music for me.
If only they were more like the Boss Tones and had a guy who just dances, it would have been even better.
It would have been great. Yeah.
I mean,
every band should have that
every
guy,
band
right?
should just have a guy to dance on stage for you. Yeah.
It'd be hard to dance to Air Supply though.
Yeah, fair enough. But look, people look like idiots dancing to ska music too. So like, what?
It's
Yeah,
totally true.
just do whatever you
Well, and
want.
there's that phenomenon too, like at a wedding or a rock concert or whatever. If you just focus on one person dancing on the floor, they'll look like the biggest asshole in the world, no matter who they are, no matter how good a dancer they are.
Yeah.
If you like kind of sketch everything else out around them and just focus in on that one person, everybody looks
Yeah,
stupid.
but then when it's all collective, it's just one beautiful set of motion.
Just dance like nobody's watching, Andrew.
Yeah, there we go. So, all right. Well, I want to hit on. You said that was your last one on your list. I'll just real quickly touch on a couple honorable mentions that I had on my list. The one I was going to talk about that I nixed in real time as we were going because I just felt like it didn't fit the spirit of what we were doing, but this one really falls into the more people I think would be surprised. I know you're not going to be surprised by this, but I think a lot of people would be, and that's Linkin Park. That they definitely, like, I feel like after Chester died, they sort of retroactively became more acceptable to talk about as artists. Whereas in the moment they were sort of,
Yeah, what do they call that in the movie industry? Retcon?
yeah, their legacy has been retconned a bit.
I think so too. Although I think when they didn't they do like an unplugged with Jay-Z or
yeah,
something?
and that
Or
real,
not an unplugged, they did a
but they did
record with Jay-Z.
they did a but it was kind of unplugged, I think.
The Roots backed up Jay-Z on
Oh,
Unplugged.
that, yeah, that's right. But maybe it wasn't unplugged, but it was a mishmash, of their
A
songs,
mashup,
a
yeah.
mashup. Uh, and you're right, that definitely earned them a lot of credibility. I think that they
It was
didn't.
called Collision
Yeah,
Course.
that's right. But I, for a long time, tried to deny that I liked Linkin Park. This is one that I would lie and say that I didn't like them at the time, because when they came out, like there was I don't know how to describe my feeling about that moment, but there was like, I almost thought that like Linkin Park was sort of butt rock in a way. And I just, or
I felt
that was,
like it was for a generation that wasn't ours. I felt like
yeah,
we were too old when it came out.
yeah. And so it almost, to me, it seemed weird at that time to like say, oh yeah, I'm really into Linkin Park. But when they put out their second album, Meteora, I went out and bought that album. I couldn't deny it anymore. I saw them play on Metallica's Summer Sanitarium tour at the Pontiac Silverdome back when that was still barely standing. I mean, it was already decrepit, but they played there, and I just loved their live performance. It's one of those things, like when you would see Linkin Park live, you're not going to get a lot of the improvising because everything is tracked to the effects, so they have to stay within a certain timing. They can't just pull out a song out of the blue that they weren't planning on doing in the moment, so you lose a little bit of spontaneity with them live, which I think hurts them. But Chester was so magnetic live. I mean, his voice was unbelievable. I expected them to be terrible. I thought, there's no way this guy can sing like that live. There's no way. That's studio magic. And I mean, seeing it
He
live,
was very much like his idol Chris Cornell. He could sing.
absolutely. And so I fell in love with that album. Then like Minutes to Midnight, like absolutely love that album. Might be my favorite Linkin Park album. Uh, I think it was A Thousand Suns after that, which I really liked as well. After that, they put out a couple albums that I didn't get into as much, but I don't want to spend too much time because we're in the honorable mention segment. But uh,
I never listened to Linkin Park. I thought it was too cool. I didn't buy any of their records. I was into indie rock and emo at the time. And then in hindsight, I feel like I missed out
yeah,
big time.
so I think it's
Because you're right. Chester Bennington was just that dude.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's some rumors that they're reforming with a new singer, which I'm curious to see what that is. But like, it's one of those things we've talked about this like with Alice in Chains. Like, as much as we like William Duvall and he does a great job, he's a great guy, gets along with the band musically, but he's not Lane Staley, and I kind of feel like they could be in that zone. Uh, Another thing I was going to mention was sort of a genre, I guess. And this is I love chill step electronic music, like this mix of chill wave and dubstep. That is my go-to if I want to listen to music while playing video games. I listen to that kind of stuff all the time. Um, it's nothing that I talk about a lot. It's nothing that I'm like, oh man, you got to hear this. Like, it's sort of disposable music. Like, I don't know a lot of the artists. A lot of them are just remixes anyways, but and samples and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's a style that I really like. um Another one that I was going to mention is New Radicals, and not because of them being like a one hit wonder. I love that whole album, beginning to end. Hope I didn't just give away the ending. Mother, we just can't get enough. What the I forget what the closing song is. Something about church or crying in church. That's a really good song. But like, it's such like a obscure thing. But yeah, I would throw New Radicals in there as a thing people I think would be surprised how much I like that album. Like,
I think that album was better than just being one single,
yeah,
but I didn't listen to it a lot, but you know, it, it was that day and age where you kind of had to you just couldn't buy everything and you couldn't listen to
yeah,
everything. You couldn't be a fan of everything the way that you can today,
yeah,
which is, again, too bad for us.
yeah. I but and by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, we only get what we give. Is that what that?
Yep.
I'm always bad with song. Like, I always mess up song titles and stuff in here, and I probably sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. But like, I'm telling you guys, like, it's hard when you're on the spot and you're like constantly trying to recall all these songs from like your youth.
You get what you
You
give.
get what you give. Yeah. And then I'm going to close this with one more. This one I'm truly embarrassed of how much I like. And that's Puddle of Mud. Uh,
Let me tell the story first.
oh, all right. You got a story for this one.
So,
Good.
I was not a big Puddle of Mud fan, but I thought they were good. Like, I thought their singles were really well done, well crafted songs, really good radio hits, and I thought that band had a ton of potential because I thought his vocal style was really good. And a friend of mine offered me 2 free tickets to go see them. They were filming their set at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for MTV. And so not only did I get to go see Puddle of Mud for free, I got to see them tape for MTV. Um, and they were good and everything else, but the big thing for me was they kind of sheepishly came back after they were done. They were like, yeah, they wanted another take of this other song, so we're gonna play this one again. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is how TV's made.
Yeah.
And that's not a shot at the band. That's not a shot. It's not a shot at anybody. It's just like, oh, I saw behind the curtain. I wish I hadn't.
That's the fourth wall coming down.
Yeah.
But that's basically like apparently if you saw MTV Unplugged back in the day, apparently that's pretty much how that was too. That if they weren't satisfied, they would play. And like Kurt even alludes to that on Nirvana, as he said, what he says, I forget which song it is. He's going to try in a different key, and he's like, if it doesn't work, he's like, these people are just going to have to wait, and we'll do it again, you know. But for me, I'm much like you. I liked their radio songs. I was like, you know, like this is again kind of butt rocky, but like these are good songs. Like Blurry, remember Blurry? Like that was a really, really strong song. But I saw them open for Korn on, was that the Follow the Leader tour? Maybe I don't even remember anymore. But I really thought they were great live. They again, I appreciated that much in the spirit of the Pearl Jam. There wasn't any stage magic going on. These were just dudes who just went out there and rocked, and they just absolutely rocked and played these songs really well live. And so I actually went out and bought that album, and like it's a good album. Like they do the soft, loud dynamic thing really well. Like you said, like well written songs. Like yet the lyrics are not great, but you know, but he is a good singer though. Like he writes really good vocal melodies and sings them well. And
They just broke too late. They broke too
yeah,
late. If they had broken earlier, they were a band out of
they
time.
needed to beat Godsmack to the punch is what they needed to do, because they were definitely pulling from those grunge influences too. Like it was definitely
Someday
in
we
there.
need to talk about Godsmack, and I want to I want somebody to explain to me. I want to understand why Godsmack became so freaking big.
Yeah.
It never made any
Well,
sense to me.
I'm not going to be the person to do that for you. I saw them open for Metallica, and like I'm an easy target usually. Like if I see a band live, I tend to gain appreciation for them. I hated them live. I thought it was so bad, but
Well, and Wes Scantlin from Puddle of Mud is a killer singer live,
yes,
and Sully Erna I think kind of
yeah,
stinks.
that's exactly it.
And they name themselves after an Alice in Chains song. It's
Yeah,
like, it's just
yeah,
please,
like
please. And Puddle of Mud with two D's is not exactly like, you know, the depth of
for
intellectualism,
sure.
but man, that you're right. So their singles, they should have been another Stone Temple Pilots, or they should have been bigger than Stained.
Yes, yeah, that's another
And they just
one.
weren't.
Yeah, they just. I think you're right. They probably caught the
I should
tail
have
end.
brought up Stained. Stained is the other, and this is where we should finish, by the way.
Okay.
Stained is a band that I loved, but I don't. My love for them doesn't really persist. So I don't feel like I can bring it up, because I won't go back and listen to any of that stuff today. Or when I do, I don't like it. I can't hear it the way I heard it when I loved
Yeah,
it.
I was just gonna say I just listened to Dysfunction. I probably like a month ago. I put it on and I expected to love
Is that
it.
the one with Mud
Yep,
Shovel and all
which
that
was
stuff?
always my
Yeah.
favorite. They break the cycle was their next album that was really like their breakout. Like that was just a huge album. But for me, I liked the sound of Dysfunction, that raw, just heavy. They were so heavy, man. But like I expected to love it, and it didn't hold up very well for me. It was a difficult listen, and I was really bummed by that actually. But I saw them open for Korn as well, but that was on a different tour.
I did
That was
too.
the Issues tour, I believe. I'm almost positive that was
I
Issues.
saw them open for Korn in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Did Mindless Self Indulgence open that one before Stained?
I don't remember.
You would remember. Trust me, you would
Or we were
remember.
late.
If you saw them, you would remember, and that's all I'm going to say about it. My friends and I joke about that to this day. It was the most. All I'll say is one of the most jaw-dropping live performances I've ever seen, and I was stunned at how much people liked that band around us. It was weird, and I'll just leave it at that.
I can't even remember which song it is from Dysfunction. There's one song on Dysfunction by Stain that I would stand by today, but
A flat,
I can't remember.
A flat's really good.
I just I just can't remember which one it is.
Home was good. I think they had a song called Raw on it that was really good.
Well, when I figure it out, I'll let you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, no, you try and listen to some of that stuff from Break the Cycle
Yeah.
today, and it just doesn't hold up. And
No.
then Aaron Lewis has kind of turned himself into a bit of a clown,
Yeah.
and then I had a you know what, the I can't substantiate any of this stuff; it's hearsay. But what I'd heard about Stained was that when they kind of hit it real big and they were one of the biggest rock bands in the world, they when they came to Cleveland, they happened to be in town the same time as Aerosmith, but they were at the Rock Hall and they were a guest at the Rock Hall and they holed up in some conference room and were just baking the place out with pot, and Aerosmith was there visiting the same day, and Steven Tyler was like, "Yeah, tell them we don't want to come meet them, and that they need to act more respectfully." Uh, like the elder statesman telling the young bucks
Yeah.
that they're being dicks.
Well, look, like
I have no idea if that's actually true,
say
but that's what I heard.
say what you will about Aerosmith though, but you got to show some respect,
Yeah. So, wow, man, I think we've thoroughly embarrassed ourselves. No, not at all.
No.
I love what I love,
It,
and this is where the feedback comes in,
it,
where I want to know what you guys all
yes.
listen to.
Please
That
give us some of yours, please. But like the
I
the
can't even
conversation
imagine.
is just more fun if like talking about some of this stuff than it is to just sit there and talk about how much we love Pearl Jam. It's I had to get a Pearl Jam
Again.
reference in. I almost went a whole episode.
No, we talked about it during the concert.
Oh,
ticket
that's right.
thing
That's right. Never mind.
as
We were
well,
safe. I
so.
wasted that reference. Damn.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. It's been the Album of Record podcast.